рад вас видеть.
Hello, everybody. I'm super happy to see you all. My name is Pavel Tarotinov, and I will be talking to you today about our migration to detection as a code in VK SOC, and tell you the story. It's not finished. There's a lot of things to improve, and it's rather an invitation to participate. And then some final report. And for the last 8 years, I'm doing SOCs, and currently I'm the L3 lead for VK SOC. Happy to see you all. And definitely my competition with the lunch is a tough one, but hopefully it will be interesting. So what are we talking about today? Let's shed some more light on it. This is, the t-shirt that I will give away for the best question. We will talk about where we were 1 year ago, about a year and a half ago, what issues we faced, and why we started to look into the detection as a code story. What were the problems and nuances? And what was the approach that we assume now? It's not a final one, but a good one to discuss. What were the advantages? And what are the negatives, disadvantages? And have some summary. So a year and a half ago, we had a CM system, ELK, and we were migrating to another CM. And developing the rules was spread between different teams. L1 was working with alerts, and the L2 investigations, and L3 the detecting logic. So it was based on standard DLK tools, and DevOps was responsible for, of course, running all this. Of course, we had some issues. During the SOC operation, we had about 1,000 rules, a big database. It was hard to manage this and understand who does what is this. The second point was that L1 works 24/7, and L3 8/5. So we had incidents where we wanted to add some simple exception to the rules in non-working time, because it was giving too many false positives to L1, and we had to give L1 the rights to edit the rules. Then L2, being very deeply involved with the business units and business contacts, they have smart guys who are able to create relevant rules, so they needed to create some specific rules and content. And also we had a lot of requests from the external security teams, like business unit security, that wanted to create some custom rules for their specific project, their specific business unit. And the question was, how do we manage and control the changes, the detection logic, health, and understand who added what? How do we find the author of the changes? But if it was a long time ago, it can be that the author is not available or on vacation, or sick, or he or she just doesn't remember. A lot of questions, like how do you give analytics on the rules, understand which business unit created this, what are the TTPs covered by this or that. How do we manage and control that our detection logic is not broken? Besides that, we wanted to get automation, mass changes, simplify the CM migration, and arrange the rules in a vendor-independent way, so that we are not dependent on changing the tools. And of course, reusing part of some of the rules. And then we decided to prioritize detection as a code approach. So who knows what this approach is about? Just by the show of hands. Okay, perfect. So who has implemented this approach in their organization? Okay, one hand, right? Am I not mistaken? Yeah. Okay. So let's discuss it. Okay, second hand.
Собственно, давайте вспомним, что это такое, почему он стал нам интересен.
To remind you of what it is and why it's interesting, this term was coined by Anton Chuvaikin in 2020 when he was working in Gartner, and he published an article saying that it would be great if the rules were defined by code and we would be working with it, using the same techniques as working with code. Then the vendors, during a number of years, more and more vendors started to support this. So they told us about their products and solutions. So what is it about? And we take the software development approach and apply the rules to the development of the detection logic. To apply this, the rules need to be defined by the code. It's not definitely per se a programming language, but it should be a DSL, should be a text-based description. So when we get this capability, we have a lot of capability to do versioning, to do automation, CVS version control, and of course we can do, grep, CDA, AVK, and all those things. And it simplifies a lot the collaboration and the exchange of rules between the teams, discussing the rules, when you can just show a piece of code and most people would understand it. So this is great. And also, what is important, like how does the pipeline look? High level. We see change or a new rule, we commit it to Git, we convert it to the artifact that is understood by our protection system, and then we deploy it, if all goes well. In our case, it's CM. Of course, we need version control, CI/CD, like TeamCity Jenkins, and to store the artifacts on Nexus, Artifactory, and in our case, we need a CM. Sounds great, right? Simple and easy to understand. We thought about it and decided that, makes sense. And of course, we were quite naive in this. We were, at that time, migrating from ELK to another CM, but decided to have a look towards ELK because there's a lot of material on migrating to detection as code. They have a lot of repositories, a lot of useful tools and scripts and experience with that. So it's easier to translate the rules into the artifact that's easily understood by the ELK. So we thought, let's implement it there. That will help us integrate with another CM. We will first learn how to do it and then
Не так просто. Есть нюанс.
migrate. But it wasn't that easy, of course,
Были еще L1 и L2,
because we had L1 and L2 for whom we needed to keep the rights to manage the rules, and we were not ready to spread this approach to all the levels and lines. So we decided we will enable rule editing through both AI, UI and Git. And of course, this is a complicated thing that can lead to conflicts.
Плюс мы также осознавали, мы хотели это
Moreover,
как бы до перехода
we wanted to make it fast, but after carefully examining the required effort, we understood it's not worth
вкатим достаточно много ресурсов.
worth trying, because we'll get a lot of resources engaged in the project and potentially not get the results we needed. So we decided to have a look at another CM. And we started looking at the second CM system.
Все было не так хорошо уже с поддержкой
And yeah, it wasn't as good because detection as a code support was not well developed there. That CM had UI-based rules, and there were no solutions out of the box to do it. DSL, tools,
То есть такое чистое поле.
manuals, nothing.
Но, с другой стороны, вроде как есть полуофициальное
But at the same time,
поддерживаемое API.
there was a half-official, half-supported API enabling the rules to be uploaded,
Вроде как то, что надо. И вроде с этим можно жить.
actively to be used,
Скажу сразу,
and we
на
decided
тот
that,
момент,
yeah,
на
we
год
can live with
назад
that.
это было там приватное API, которое не было
So,
документировано.
about a year ago, it was a private API. It was not well documented.
На тот
I'm
момент
not
это было
monitoring it right now.
неподдерживаемый API.
And,
Мы решили попробовать с ним поработать. Как бы,
It wasn't supported. We started to
уперлись опять
work
же
with
в
it.
то, что слишком много
And
пришлось бы делать с нуля.
We finally saw that a lot of things would have to be done from scratch, like, just have a JSON with key values, and that would make it humongous, and we would have to create our own DSL, our own development tools that would enable the analysts, autocomplete, syntaxes, highlighting, and all that stuff. And that would need to be synchronized with what is stored in CM. So yeah, you can do this stuff, but there was no official API support, and everything we were doing could just disappear, and the resources would be wasted. So, luckily, while we were thinking, a decision was made to create our own CM, VKCM, and besides detection as a code, we understood that out-of-the-box solutions are not sufficient for us. They do not comply to our requirements, scalability, implementation speed, feature landing speed. We had to add new features that were very specific to our infrastructure, and we were not ready. We understood that we are not ready for such a key system as CM system, that for the vendor lock. And of course, one of the reasons was that we wanted detection as a code to be implemented. In VKCM, we planned to use detection as a code as our default mode, to have native support. All the rules were defined only by text, only in our own DSL. So we have a very good real-time correlation system. So it's a Flink-based correlator. We had a very short development cycle,
не дожидаясь, пока
with a lot of features and correlations being implemented without the UI, because of course with DSL it's much easier to implement something than with UI. And yeah, we got our DSL to create our own rules. So yeah, let's see what we have here. The rules are all stored in the Git. They are all defined by code.
На данный момент есть два кластера, production и stage.
We have two clusters, stage and production.
Логи, ну, на production, естественно, очевидно.
Both use production logs.
Небольшую часть логов,
And
порядка
for the stage, we use a small part of the logs, like about 10%. For both clusters, Git is the main source of information in terms of configs and content. And we also have ATP Lab, where our analysts can emulate the attacks and test events, and the logs go to the stage cluster.
Инструмента мы используем TeamCity.
As a CI/CD, we use TeamCity.
Контроль версии Bitbucket.
CVS control, we use Bitbucket. And we store the artifacts in Nexus.
Мы используем обычный VS Code, но, собственно,
Yeah, VS Code is our ordinary tool with our own plugin
вот, и на
that I will touch on a little bit later.
3-4 миллионов хипсов.
And we have about 3-4 million hips, stage, APS, and stage 2 to 300, 2 to 3,000, 100,000 APS, and they are fully containerized. They are private cloud, so this all lives in the containers.
У нас собственная модель данных на базе.
We have our own data model based on CF, extended to about 300 fields. Looks like we don't need much more, and we promised our developers we will not be growing this number too much. We use Vector as a collector. All the mappings are based on L3, and yeah. And we store everything in Git. So
весь код правила и метаинформация правила лежали в одном файле, CPAT файле, и сначала как бы не было никаких
this all was in one file, CPAT file, and there were no tests. And of course, we understood that we need unit tests. And we need to store
каждое правило хранится
in a separate file. So now we have
по названию правила,
every rule in a separate folder.
Метаинформация, файлики YAML и тесты.
Then in CPAP, meta information in YAML and unit tests to check that the rule works for the events that we expect. As I said, we had our own DSL, have our own DSL based on S expressions. If you remember Lisp, it looks very much like it.
Правило состоит из нескольких блоков.
The rule consists of a set of blocks, the partition that defines the key,
Это фильтры, которые,
that groups the events.
мы отбираем события, да, интересные нам.
Then it defines the events and patterns, and yeah, you can define time frames, correlations, and other stuff. And of course, the third thing is what happens when the correlation rule works.
И выбирайте, куда, собственно, отправлять. Там дашборд, в мессенджер.
Of course, you can choose where to send the events, dashboard messages.
Метаинформация для нас очень важна. Для нас это очень важный момент.
Meta information is super important for us.
Многие там взаимосвязи, используем ее уже в UI.
And we base a lot of correlations and connections with this on this. And also you can use it in UI. We have rule ID that is unique to every rule.
UI и так далее.
All the alerts are connected to it, and UI.
Независимо от имени правила нам отслеживать уникальность объекта. Он генерится
This allows us to monitor the uniqueness of the object.
И затем проверяется на пайплайне, как бы, что он уникальный. Помимо этого,
And then on the pipeline, we can check that the object is unique.
привязка к источникам данных, привязка к политике логирования.
Also, TTP
И
login policy
и там есть еще пункты порядка,
and some other points that and fields that
его важность и так далее. Мы
rule status, importance, and everything. So,
и не стали там требовать все поля обязательными при
so we decided not to require all the fields to be filled in,
Если потребовать от разработчика,
because of course, if we ask the developer or analyst to fill in a lot of data,
если все-таки
he or she will find a way to avoid it.
баланс вот тут искать,
And
больше шансов, что мы получим релевантную информацию.
if we find some balance, definitely the relevant information will be
На пайплайне при мерже.
will have high probability of getting relevant information.
И вот давайте теперь немножко подробнее
And
про
let's talk in more detail about our workflow in Git.
соответственно, у нас там каждому кластеру соответствует своя ветка.
Every cluster has its own branch.
Ветка.
There's master branch and stage branches.
Мы отводим ветку
And while working with the rule, we
правила, и на самом деле еще
take the branch
вот.
based on the rule number and the Jira task ID.
Аналитик, работая с правилом, он может
Then the analyst, while working with the rule, will be able to run some tests locally to avoid multiple commits and restarting the jobs.
эти тесты все равно
But at the same time, those tests
пайплайне.
will be run in the pipeline when the merging will happen.
Merge stage проводится
So,
валидация синтаксиса, валидация мета.
Also, the syntaxes is validated, meta-info is validated, the rules are tested, and after successful merge, the analyst will check
Смотрит метрики,
how the rules work and
проверить в TTP Lab,
check the metrics, can use TTP Lab so to generate some things needed, and then deploy the rule into
Такая
prod.
история при мерже в продакшн мы тоже проводим
So while merging to prod,
но
we run all the tests we need, but also
задеплоить
we need a review
за исключением если
on the L3 level,
здесь мы
apart from the case where the L3 is doing the deploy.
во-первых
Here we believe that L3 analysts are competent enough to do it.
иначе мы бы получили довольно много там конфликтов.
It is a small team, and we would have too many conflicts while merging a number of rules. So the main idea here was to protect the prod
Коммитов из других
from commits from
которые потенциально несут там
other teams that would create risks for us,
на коммит.
even though we have to give them the right to commit.
Про юнит-тесты. Юнит-тесты, собственно, нам запускают.
Speaking about the unit tests, they are launched both locally and on the pipeline.
В правила
We check that for the events that we put into the rules,
ожидаемые реакции.
we have
И
the output
мы
that
там
we expect,
не должны получать ошибок.
and while changing the rules, we don't get too many errors.
Rule-checker также работает на пайплайне. Это немножко уже
So the rule checker works on the pipeline. It has more complex checks,
здесь
like rule syntaxes,
самая мета-информация,
and
что она корректно заполнена, что там ожидаемые
the
ожидаемые
info validation,
и самое главное,
that the values are as expected,
правила уникальные. Плюс
and the IDs are correct.
локального коррелятора и запускается
Also, there is a local correlator
что позволяет
check
нам убедиться в том, что
that enables
то
us
правило, которое мы деплоим, оно вообще
to
не
ensure that the rule we are deploying will not drop the job.
И плюс аналитик, когда задеплоил на stage кластер,
So when the analyst deploys to the stage
по
cluster,
различным метрикам, это как
he can
работа кластера, так
monitor
и специализированные
cluster
метрики
metrics,
по работе конкретных
both cluster
правил,
metrics and specialized
до там
rules,
запуска отдельных фильтров, нагрузки
including specific filters, specific load monitoring,
по каждому пайплайну.
and yeah, more than 25 dashboards on each
Ну и,
pipeline.
как говорил, в качестве инструмента разработки мы используем
And as I said, as development tool, we use VS Code, but we have our own extension
дает автодополнение и
that
позволяет
has
генерить вот тот
syntaxes,
самый
autocomplete, and meta-information
поля, конечно,
block
заполнять
generation.
руками, какие-то просто
Some
шаблоны
of the fields would be filled
автоматически генерится.
by hand, some would be generated automatically.
Ну и, собственно, какие мы на практике получили вот прямо сейчас.
So, what are the practical benefits that we got from the current implementation, even though it's not
Мы
the
сейчас
final
можем
version?
достаточно просто, легко понять, кто, когда изменил правила.
We can currently understand who changed the rules and when.
Мы можем убедиться, что правила не из
We have
команды
Git history.
только через ревью, аналитику,
We understand that
что очень важно.
only
Мы можем
all the rules are introduced only through L3 approval.
мы можем автоматически
We can
контролировать
revert the changes
качество
and automatically control the quality of the detecting logic
описания, синтаксиса и вообще, что
in
она.
terms of how well it's defined, the syntaxes, and
Ну и, конечно,
that the cluster is intact and the jobs are running.
изменений, автоматизации,
All the mass changes, automations,
работать все вот эти вот плюсы от работы с правилом как с текстом.
additional development benefits are
Надо,
applied.
наверное, сказать и о минусах, потому что для
But
нас они
also,
могут быть,
I need to talk
как
about
сказать,
the
незначительными,
negative
но
sides, the
для кого-то могут быть
disadvantages,
принципиальными.
because
Есть
for
все-таки
some,
минусы, да.
they might look
Все-таки работа с гитом и работа
minor,
с
but for some,
правилами, как, с
they can
кодом,
be
она
important.
требует определенной
So
культуры,
working with
работы
the rules
аналитика,
as a code,
соблюдения
it
схем,
does require
определенной квалификации. Не
some
сказать, что это
competency
что-то
from
прям
them,
какой-то rocket science,
some
да, этому достаточно легко и
qualifications,
быстро можно
high
научиться,
requirements
но тем не
to
менее.
the culture
Самое
of
главное,
naming
наверное,
and
то, что
working with
поддержка
Git,
CI/CD пайплайнов,
and of
она
course
требует
supporting
все-таки ресурсов
CI/CD
DevOps.
pipelines
Или тех людей, которые занимаются у вас
needs
организацией,
DevOps or
поддержкой
people who are doing
инфраструктуры.
the CI/CD
Для нас, да,
infrastructure
для нас
support
эти
in your org.
минусы как бы не очень значительные,
For
и
us,
мы, в общем, думаем, как это
those
можно,
things are
как это
not
можно нивелировать.
too
У нас есть определенные планы,
important.
как
We
можно,
have some plans,
сохранив
and
подход detection as a code,
we
как
think that we know
снизить порог
how
вхождения,
we can both
перевести часть
keep
самых
the
сложных
detection as a
операций
code
внутрь
approach
CVM,
and at the
при
same
этом
time
сохранив возможность работы через Git.
switch some operations
Сделать более всё это
into
user-friendly,
CM
сделать
while working with Git. Make it more user-friendly,
добавление исключений для
add
аналитиков
some
первой и второй линии.
easy ways
Перевести
to
часть
add
действий
exceptions
правилами
for
UI,
L1 and
но,
L2,
опять же, правила все равно останутся кодом.
move some rule
Вот такой подход у нас сейчас принят.
processing
Мы
to
стараемся
UI,
это всё сделать
but the
более,
rules themselves will stay
понятно
as a
для,
code. So
скажем так, и более готовым из коробки
we
для
are doing our best to make it more
у которых, может быть, нет собственных
productized,
DevOps.
maybe
Ну и,
to be able to share it with the
все
teams that do not have their own DevOps.
LLM-ки тоже хотим подключить туда
And of course, the LLMs that
ассистов,
we
написание
love
правил, в оптимизации
Copilot
правил. Тоже уже тестировали
to
эти вещи у
assist
себя на нашем
creating
внутреннем
rules and optimizing rules.
Ну,
We
пока
already
результаты
tested this in our
будем
internal
рассказывать, наверное,
LLMs.
тема для отдельного выступления.
Probably the results of those are a separate topic to
Собственно,
present.
еще раз, к чему мы пришли, какие выводы для себя
So to sum it up,
из истории с внедрением detection as a code.
I think the main conclusions we have after implementing detection as a code.
Всегда перевешивают, потому что вы
For
получаете
many of us,
управляемую
the
масштабируемую
advantages are much bigger than the disadvantages because it's more
но система
scalable
при этом должен хоть как-то поддерживать этот
and you can manage the
хотя
rules
бы на
more in a more
уровне
flexible way.
какого-то
But of course, the CM should be
идеале, чтобы
supporting
CM предоставлял там инструменты
this approach
по
on the API level.
с этими инструменты
least.
разработчика, инструменты валидации.
Ideally, it needs to have developer tools, validation tools, documentation, and other things.
Людям, конечно, нельзя. Надо всегда
Trusting
вкладываться
people
в тесты,
is
потому что если все это внедрить без
not a good strategy.
автотестирования и валидации,
You
эта
need
система
auto
очень
test,
быстро
you need
может умереть,
validation,
и вы
because
получите кучу
this
бескорректного
system
контента у себя.
would
Ну,
create a lot
и,
of
конечно, все
irrelevant
плюсы от
content.
того, что у нас правила
And
кода,
all the benefits of
вы можете применять все
having rules as a code and as text,
какие
yeah,
плюсы
you
вы
are
из этого
just
извлечете, да?
limited by.
Наверное, на этом у меня все. Давайте перейдем к вашим вопросам. Да.
Your imagination. So let's switch to your questions, if you don't mind.
Да, спасибо за доклад. У меня два вопроса.
Thank you for the presentation. I have two questions.
Запускаете ли
First
вы
question.
юнит-тесты только...
Do you launch
Запускаете ли
unit
вы
tests?
юнит-тесты только при деплое
Do
правил?
you launch unit tests only when you do deploy,
Потому что могут быть
but
ситуации, что
not
сломается
at the
парсинг,
backdrop, so to
сломается
speak,
формат
because
лога.
maybe parsing
В общем,
will
как вы
break down
контролируете,
or logs
что
will
правило
break
железное
down?
какое-то?
How do you control that the rule is really great?
Мы юнит-тестами конкретно этими контролируем.
When we do unit tests, then we control the moment. We control the thing that it responds to those events that we have there.
Запускается этот тест
But
только при
does it?
деплое.
But the test starts running only when you deploy it, right? Or is it launched once every 5 minutes at the backdrop? It's launched by an analyst when he develops the rule, when he adjusts the rule. It's launched in the pipeline so that we make sure that we modify the rule. We still respond to those events we should respond to. The format of files, parsing errors, and events from the source, it is controlled on the level of collectors, vectors. Our DevOps have their own alerts and they have dashboards to monitor this. And in case if it happens, then metrics kick in. Okay, and my second question, do you gather metrics about the rules when they do alert overall alerts, false positive alerts, in order to prioritize by TTL the review on the level of L3? Of course, we gather it. Of course, the most frequent false alerts in rules, and we have dashboards about it. Periodically, we do review. But overall, when there are false alerts because of the rule, it may be this way by design, because a lot of activities are in the gray zone and our infrastructure is enormous, and our admins do some crazy things that are not actually good. So when there are a lot of false alerts, it doesn't always mean that you should do something to the rule.
Здравствуйте. Спасибо за доклад. Было очень интересно. Меня
Thank you for the presentation. It was very interesting. My name is Evgeny. I would like to ask a few questions. Some of them may be overlapping with the previous questions. Question 1. Rules testing. Does it happen before they switch from SDSL to CM syntax on the level of pipeline, or does it happen after they're already in CM? Okay, I see. Unit tests are run on pure rules, and role checker that I told about, it kicks in and with the artifact, and it's loaded into local correlator. Artifact is based upon a set of rules. Thank you. The second question, does testing happen only within your stand that emulates events? Because it seems to me that it may happen so that in production, the customer or in just product infrastructure, it may happen so that one of the rules that you tested doesn't give false alerts, and the other rule will give a lot of false alerts in production. How do you approach it? Do you gather a lot of data in order to test the rule for false positives? What I told about testing on stage and about working with rules, it's done in order to make sure that we do not deploy incorrect rules to production, so that we do not deploy false alerts generating rule, and also so that we do not upload a resource-intensive rule. When it's in production, when you're working in production, then naturally, then you handle false alerts, we adjust them, we activate them. So it's an ongoing work, never ends. So in practice, it happens only once the rule is rolled out to everyone, right? Some false alerts can be caught at stage, but some false alerts will be detected only once the rule is already in production, and it may take 1 week or 1 month until some event happens or something happens that will generate a lot of alerts. So it's an ongoing work. Okay, thank you.
Спасибо за доклад.
Thank you for the presentation.
Вот у меня.
There's a question here. Oh, are you there? Okay.
Первый вопрос. Вы сказали,
Question
что у вас
one.
уже была какая-то наработка
You
по
said
экспертизе,
that
там, в количестве
you already
1000
have some
правил.
expertise,
Они
you
автоматом
have
переехали на
more than
новую
1,000
синтаксис или нет?
rules. Were they automatically transferred to the new syntax?
Нет, автоматом это
Not automatically.
рискованно. Во-первых,
Automatically, it would be too risky.
поменялись.
A lot of sources changed. We used to have ADR Elastic, and now we have other sources that
Мы полностью рефачили правила.
substituted the old ones, and we rewrote all the rules and we rewrote the logic of these rules. Rules got adjusted significantly, so it couldn't be done automatically. Some part of the rules are still not transferred, and given this experience, given the fact that we have this SL, and given that we have already cut out rules from ELK, and we are backing up ourselves. But I would not rely on an automatic converter. It's a more intellectual work. It's a work for a human.
Правильно понимаю, что
And another question, do I get it right that the algorithm of L3 analyst work in writing rules, he downloads a JSON from CEM, it contains a number of events, then he uploads it to the local file system, with the help of WS Code auto login, he creates autopack plugin, and then manually writes this huge document.
сниппетов, автогенератор.
Aren't there any snippets, automatic generators, so that you feed a JSON and it filters and patterns and it builds it for you? Great question. Actually, this part with uploading JSON, we're willing to automate it. Indeed, currently an analyst needs to create these basic events in JSON manually, but obviously it should be automated and we will do it. About all the rest, it's better. First of all, in our rules, we can use templates. And in the code, we can use the function to upload those the ready-made pieces of rules that are there already. For instance, a list of interpreters or pathways to shell in Linux or bigger pieces. And in the text of the rule, you can use it as a function. You can just include them there. Second, the code of the rule can be copied and it can be reused as a template. Most importantly, do not use ID of meta information. It must be unique. Meta information is generated semi-automatically when you press the button in VS Code. So you create a template, it has an ID, it has pre-filled fields. The analyst adjusts them later. So it's not that bad.
Спасибо.
Okay, I see. Thank you.
Спасибо за доклад. Хотел уточнить.
Thank you for the presentation. I wanted to clarify. How are you managing exceptions now in non-working hours when L3 is not there? Currently, we created an opportunity to upload to Redis. We have Redis as an analog of Exp lists. Rules and correlators can interact with it, and key values are pulled from there. And first line can adjust key value files that get uploaded to Redis.
Добрый день. Вот
Good afternoon.
модно как-то что ли.
Currently, it's trendy, I guess, to use XS code, just any word than S code. But everybody's talking about this at every conference. There's a presentation about it. But for some reason, nobody has rolled out a ready-made product for sale. If everybody is writing it in-house, internally, why does it happen this way? A good question. XSO? Can you give more? XSO and code. Detection as a code is... well, I can't comment on some output, or I can't comment on when we're going to put it for sale, but offer it for sale, but maybe you're testing it. We're doing it in-house, we're doing it for ourselves, but we are trying to make sure that it's not only a custom product that's good for us only. First of all, because simply this product is used internally, we have a huge holding company, we have a lot of business projects and organization parts. And first of all, we'd like to give them the opportunity to work with their tenants, with their spaces, in their big CM. And they need a more user-friendly, more out-of-the-box solutions. Not all of them are ready to code something. This is why now when we're developing TM, or actually when we're developing TM, and when we're planning further development, we take into account that not only experts and geeks from Line 3 will be using it, but some regular users. And these solutions will be not only for us, not only for experts. And what's the timeline of this implementation? I can't comment on that. Just like in the anecdote, maybe roughly. Stay tuned. I guess some news will be published soon. Thank you.
Паш, а аналитики счастливы?
Are analysts happy? UI was taken from them. They cannot adjust code at night. L1, L2, are they happy with these new updates? Analysts, are you happy? Yeah, they're smiling. Actually, we were rather unhappy about another thing, that it's not in our control. Like, we cannot control the rules. We don't have measures of control of the rules through UI, and it's difficult to navigate in this. There are some descriptions in Confluence, there are some IDs of the rules. There is a list in ELK, but when there is up to 1,000 rules, it's very difficult to handle it, to keep it in control. So at the first stage, where we were getting used to this, it took some time to get used to this, but now I can't see why people could be unhappy. And I have never heard from my people that they would be unhappy about something, but they're okay. And another question, are there any additional modules of neural network, for instance, in order to calculate risk SWOT, for instance? Are there any things that are not standard ones, and how are they extracted? Well, for instance, you put an event into the neural network to calculate the score of a script, or you ask LLM and ask to give a verdict. What about additional modules to analyze events on top of correlation? Neural networks, LLMs, when you not only correlate, but also you call a module or a Python script. We're working on this. We have, I cannot comment on details, but the question is how to call it in this approach. When it's a code, since DSL is developed by us, we can call anything and we can connect the systems, just like we added Redison. We connected DSL events. When the correlator sends a certain type of event into a certain layer, it triggers Redis and returns the event. But since the system is fully in our control, we can do any integrations here. Thank you.
Добрый день. Спасибо большое за доклад. Было интересно.
Good afternoon. Thank you for the presentation. It was very interesting. During the presentation, you mentioned that there are a lot of disadvantages now because there are a lot of costs to introduce this detection as a code approach. It's additional workload of DevOps engineers, increasing qualification of analysts, their upgrade, and also additional workforce to support additional systems, Redis, GitLab, TeamCity, etc. But on top of the sensation that you're doing a nice thing, the right thing, and this is the right approach to do, when you introduce any process, it has to have a purpose. In the end, it's improving efficiency of the team and improving processes,
производительности, либо же
either
сокращение
improving
расходов
performance
на тот или
or
иной бизнес-процесс.
productivity or
Считали ли
reducing
вы,
costs
если
for
считали,
processes.
то какова
Did you
получилась оценка
calculate, or if you did,
того,
then what is
насколько
the
эффективной
estimation
стала работа вашей
of
команды
how much
после
more
внедрения
efficient your team
данного
has become
подхода?
after this approach was introduced?
Хороший, конечно, вопрос про метрики.
It's a great question, I see, about metrics, about efficiency assessment.
Я скажу честно, нет, мы не считали.
Honestly, we did not estimate this. We had a specific problem with managing a huge rules base and with controlling the quality of the texts. This was the problem that we were solving. The matter was not about inefficiency of analysts or some other analysts, not L3 or anyone else. We just couldn't ensure quality and we couldn't ensure good control of this base. I think that now this solution helps us achieve this goal. Of course, there's room for improvement, that's usually, but it seems that we found a good solution for us. It can really be useful to others as well, because the approach is quite flexible and quite universal. About resources, once again, yes, if you're implementing it in Greenfield, then yeah. In case if this approach is not maintained well, if you don't have DBI, you don't have documentation, don't have any tools to work with it, then of course you will spend a lot of resources. But in case if you already have CI/CD infrastructure, in case if you manage configurations of anything of infrastructure, in case if it's already deployed and your CM is more or less ready to this and compatible with this, in case if you have people who are DevOps now, then it's much easier for you. And also it gets much easier in case if your vendor CM helps you and supports this approach, and if it's described well. There are references, documents in the system.
Спасибо.
Спасибо.
Здравствуйте. Подскажите, пожалуйста,
Hello.
как часто у вас
My
происходит
question
ревью
is,
ответов?
how often do you review alerts?
Какие силы вы задействуете для этого? И отдаете
What
ли
efforts are
ревью
engaged
алертов,
in this, and whether you hand over
L2, и кто этим вообще, в принципе, занимается?
alerts review to
Какой
L1 or
процесс?
L2? Do you and how is this process built? About the number of alerts, I cannot say any specific numbers, but it's hundreds per day, and partially it's our decision, it's on purpose, and the number of false alerts by design, because we react to a lot of things that are in the gray zone, and also we have a huge infrastructure where admins, DevOps, developers, anyone, all of them, they're doing operations that are very similar to malicious activity. This is why we have a lot of false alerts. Aside from that, we have a standard role distribution. L1 are responsible for alerts, processing, their triage, initial investigation. In case if it's necessary, they hand over alert to L2. They escalate it there for a deeper diagnostics and investigation. In case if there is a proven incident, then they escalate it to L2 to work with incident. In case if it's something super critical and super complicated, or in case if you need expertise for L3, then it's escalated to L3. That's the way it works. And one more question. Why do you use Git? Why aren't you using GitLab? Why aren't we using GitLab? It's because we had infrastructure built. It was based on the other systems, 3CT and GitLab. We do a lot of things through CI/CD. We just decided to use the ready-made infrastructure.
Спасибо. Спасибо большое.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your attention.